Hello, BookTube. I have a tag for you today on this snowy day here in Boston. It snowed all night long. It snowed all morning long. It's been snowing all day. it's a, it's a fluffy but heavy snow that's building up, and it's keeping me housebound. So I thought I would do a tag, and I saw this one on Brian at Bookish's channel. It was created by KrakentoagoodBook, and I'll leave links to both of those down below, and it's called the Fave Festive Family Film Tag. It's all about holiday books and how they intersect with the holidays. So, the prompt number one is Elf. The best way to spread Christmas cheer is singing loud for all to hear. And that is, what's a book that makes you smile? It doesn't necessarily have to be holiday related. For me, it's fairly predictable. It's going to be Rumpole of the Bailey, John Mortimer's stories about a harried old Bailey hack who lives on the Gloucester Road with she who must be obeyed, and spends his days in court, dueling with the likes of Judge Bullingham for the slim pickings of legal aid. I know all the Rumpole stories by heart, but like Sherlock Holmes or the Jungle Books, I read them endlessly anyway, and they always put a smile on my face. The next prompt is the Muppet Christmas Carol. Blue furry Charles Dickens who hangs out with a rat. Charles Dickens was a 19th century novelist. What's one of your favorite adaptations or retellings of a story? This could be a movie, a book-to-movie adaptation, or a fairy tale retelling, or whatever. And although in the broader sense I've made my opinions quite known about the fact that adaptations of books into movies or Netflix series or whatever are almost always better than the books in question, in this case I'm assuming, maybe wrongly, that I'm supposed to center on Christmassy type things. And here I want to echo something that Brian said. He mentioned that he doesn't like musicals. I don't know what kind of a gay man he thinks he is if he doesn't like musicals. Nevertheless, he mentioned Scrooge, Ronald Neam's 1970 adaptation of A Christmas Carol, with Albert Finney as Ebenezer Scrooge. A truly wonderful show. It's just truly wonderful. It's got a little bit of that David Cameron-esque muscular musical type thing that the Brits tend to do with things like Les Mis or Oliver or whatnot. But I love it anyway. And I love it mostly for the non-musical bits. Although December the 25th, the bit in the movie for the little song December the 25th is quite good. I mainly like it for the acting. Albert Finney was always capable of that amazing double feat of being both purely hammy and purely effective in the same role at the same time. Ordinarily, you sacrifice dramatic punch if you're being hammy, if you're deciding to chew scenery. So you get the dramatic, you get the ham, but you don't get anything subtle. And Finney was always able to do both, and he does that in Scrooge, especially, of course, the great redemption sequence. The spirits did it all in one night, that sort of thing. So in this particular case, I'm going to agree with Brian, but it won't happen often. The next prompt is SpongeBob Squarepants, a SpongeBob Christmas Special. This Christmas feels like the very first Christmas to me. And here's a point where I'll disagree with Brian, because the minute he heard SpongeBob SquarePants, he said, "Look at me. I'm too old for SpongeBob." Because I swear, he's one of these Americans that thinks that once he gets the certificate or whatever it is that says that you've retired from your job, well, then you start to pull in your toes and mark out your grave. I don't know what to say to him when he goes on about, look at how old I am. I'm too old for SpongeBob SquarePants. Except maybe if we were friendly enough to Voxer, which I don't think is ever going to happen, I might point out to him that I was his age so long ago that I barely remember any details from that time. And I'm still here, and I love SpongeBob. But anyway, the prompt is, what was one of the first books you read in one of your favorite genres? And for me, that's going to be The Jewels of Aptor, Samuel Delany's first published novel. A slim little thing that's in retrospect, a rather boring religious quest allegory that nevertheless has some really interesting bits in it, and also glimmers here and there of Delany's prose, of what his full-strength prose would be like. I wonder what it would be like to reread The Jewels of Aptor now in 2021. I have no idea. When I read that book, 2021 was a future that none of us were ever going to see. It was a future that we expected to see our science fiction novels set in, but not ever that we would live to see it. Keep in mind, when the wretched TV show Space 1999 premiered, it was a long way in the future. we could easily imagine that we would have a functional base on the moon, or many of them, in 1999. That was a long way in the future. So I have no idea how I would react to the Jewels of Aptor today. Probably I would consider it to be one of Delaney's few concessions to pulp science fiction before he started to go his own way. The next prompt is A Christmas Story, a major award, and this refers to, of course, the great movie A Christmas Story, which Brian mentioned in his video that he loves. Of course, I love it too. It is great. And it reminded me of something. I was reminded of Christmas Story just the other day. Of course, when you know the movie really well, you're going to be reminded of it all the time. But I was reminded of it just the other day because it has occurred to me that maybe at the end of the year I might like to finally learn about how to manage my ebook library. I have thousands of books in my ebook library now, thanks to large part to the generosity of a lot of you, but also to the fact that publishers are flooding me with ebooks. I thought it might be high time for me to learn how to manage that library. And of course, there's a website, there's an app that I have been pronouncing on this channel as Calibre forever. Since I first learned about it, I've been pronouncing it that way, when actually it's called Caliber. And as I watch innumerable YouTube instruction videos, I'm learning that. And as soon as I realized that, I remember the great scene in A Christmas Story where the father of the little boy has won a lamp. He's won a prize that comes to him in a big box, and he is so excited just to get the box in the mail before he even knows what's in it. Of course, the lamp is totally unsuitable for a mid-century suburban house, but still, before he even knows what's in it, he's wondrously reading the stamping on the box, including the word fragile. And his wife has to sort of remind him, it's fragile. That's the word, fragile. Oh, yeah. So I was reminded of A Christmas Story just the other day by that, because it's Caliber. But the prompt is, name a book you love that has won an award. And for this, I picked one of my favorite awards, the James Tate Black Memorial Prize, which is given to works of nonfiction. And in 1969, it was won by Mary Queen of Scots by Antonia Fraser, which is a book that is probably here in this room. I might not have it within arm's reach, but I love it. I love it so. I just love it so. I believe that Antonia Fraser won the James Tate Black Prize only a few years after her mother won it for Elizabeth Longford's great biography of Queen Victoria. And there are two biographies. Those are two biographies that I still read today. I consult them, and sometimes even once in a while we'll just sit down and read the whole thing. Next one is National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, Jelly of the Month Club. What's a book you were excited to read that turned out to be a disappointment? And for me, this is going to be something that the eagle-eyed among you have already noticed. With me, a lot of times when I am feeling this way, pained about a book rather than vengeful, ordinarily when a book missteps and wastes my time, and by extension wants to waste yours if I don't speak up about it, ordinarily that makes me angry in the way of a junkyard watchdog. And that removes all feeling of sympathy whatsoever. But if I'm really well disposed towards the author and really well disposed towards their previous work, and a book they do just, I don't think, works at all, sometimes, as some of you have very acutely pointed out, I will meet that book with silence. I'll never talk about it. I'll never mention it. I'll never review it. I won't rail against it. It'll just be gone from the radar. And a couple of you noticed that that was true of Circe by Madeline Miller, the author of The Song of Achilles, which I very much liked and reviewed. And it's true. I went into Circe with all the hope in the world. I even bought a UK edition because the UK cover was so bright and shiny and embossy. I don't think the book works at all. I think it takes the urgent human sympathy of The Song of Achilles that was all through that book and downplays it, and it takes the somewhat shrill, woke, fifth stage feminism that was in the background of The Song of Achilles and just slathers it all over the narrative, so that I couldn't enjoy the book, even though I thought parts of it were fairly well written. So that's gonna be my answer here is Circe. I wish nothing but the best for this author. I'm really looking forward to whatever she does next, but this one I thought was a misfire. The next one is Bad Santa. Should I fix some sandwiches? Name a character who's optimistic or wants to help others. And for this, I want to resort to the Victorian era, to Anthony Trollope. specifically Lady Glencora Palliser, who in The Prime Minister, for instance, but in a couple of other books, in a couple of other ways, always tries to do what she considers by her own lights to be something good, especially good for other people. Her judgment is terrible, so the results are often dire, but nevertheless, she's a good person. I think that's one of the main reasons why we end up loving her in the course of those books, even though she's maddening. Then the next prompt is the Santa Claus, and the tagline here, the KrakentoagoodBook does a great job all throughout here of, in parentheses, sort of giving great taglines, something that will immediately summon the movie or the special to mind when you hear it. And the same thing is true here, but it's horrifying. At the end of the year 2020, it's horrifying because the tagline from the Santa Claus is, "Seeing isn't believing, believing is seeing." And the whole edifice of the American experiment, the whole nature and soul of this country that I love so much, was destroyed in the year 2020 specifically because of that statement. Specifically because 100 million people in this country now actually live their lives according to the dogma of seeing isn't believing, believing is seeing. So that they are entitled to their own facts. So that they literally live day by day in an alternate reality. A reality that is not provable, that is not visible to the sane people in the country. They just live in that reality, and boy, oh boy, are they going to continue to do that. They are going to continue to do that. On July 4th, 2021, when most of the United States is gearing up to celebrate its independence, with fireworks and hopefully no social distancing and no masks, with a great sense of celebration, on July 4th, 2021, there will be 100 million people in this country who think Donald Trump is president. Who believe it, who are absolutely sure, who tell their little kids, their 3- and 4-year-old little kids who are coming up to them barely able to walk or talk and saying, "Who's president?" And they say, "Donald Trump is president, and don't you forget it." And they will just live in that reality. The ones that didn't get sick or die from COVID, the ones who didn't know anybody who got sick or died from COVID, will in July of 2021 be saying there was no pandemic. There was none. We saw a hint of that in 2018, the news story in 2018 about Trump worshippers, Trump cult members, seeing a dock in their pay. So being shown by a reporter two different numbers, $375, $307, and being told this is what's causing this. What's causing this is the actions of the federal government that were taken by the God you worship, by Donald Trump. And you can see that your paycheck has gone down. And that news report showed multiple Trump cultists looking at the two numbers, 375, 307, and saying 307 is higher than 375. Because they were preparing to just pack their bags and move to live in an alternate reality. So it was a little bit jarring to see that seeing isn't believing, believing is seeing. Because that's fun for a Santa movie, but if that's an attitude, if that's a philosophy that people in the world, driving cars and holding jobs and paying taxes, start to adopt in the real world, then the world is over as we know it. But anyway, what is something from a book that you wish were real? And here it's from multiple books. It's the Star Trek transporters, and specifically the newer, spruced up version in Star Trek Picard, where the characters just walk through it. They don't have to stand on a platform or starship or wherever and have an engineer carefully. The technology has improved to the point where it is ordinary. And of course, one of the things about that ordinary technology that you'd like to think, it isn't true in the original Star Trek, but you'd like to think that it's true in the new version of the transporter, is that it doesn't transport pathogens. That when your transporter pattern is taken, the pathogens, infections, anything like that is just left in the transporter buffer. And you're transported without them. If such a thing existed, if there were a Star Trek transporter gate right outside the door that did that, where I could set my coordinates and walk through, none of you would be safe. And then the last prompt is The Nightmare Before Christmas. There's frost on every window. Oh, I can't believe my eyes. In my bones, I feel the warmth that's coming from inside. What's a book that's perfect to read in winter? This one stumped me because I read all kinds of books at all times. Like, for instance, we're snowed in here, literally snowed in. I'm not going to shovel anywhere, and the snow is too high for Frida. She can't She would have to leap with every step, and certainly there would be no place for her to pee or poop. Uh, and she doesn't want to do it anyway. The first time that we tried it, first thing this morning, was all the exposure that she wanted to tall snow. So this is a perfect winter day. It's even the kind of snow, it's kind of clumpy and wet snow, kind of heavy snow that is sticking to the windows, so you can't even really see outside. Uh, and so it's a quintessential winter day, and yet I could read anything today. I don't read this way, so this question goes right by me. But there are bonus questions, like for instance, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Or Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer might be the last question of the tag. Didn't I ever tell you about Bumbles? Bumbles boats. What's one of your favorite creatures from a book? Now, this is very specific. It's from a book, but it's not from a novel. It's from a collection of short stories. Looking to see if I have it around me here, but I don't. It's from a collection of short stories. It's science fiction. It's from a collection of short stories that was done by Gardner Dozois, the late great science fiction editor. Did a collection called The Very Best of the Best, where he picked stories from his year-end anthologies and put them in a volume. And there's one story, I believe it might be the last story in that volume, that is incredible. And the being that narrates it, I guess you would call a monster, because it's not in any way human and is terrifying to humans. The story is called My English Name, and it's by R.S. Benedict, who's not an author that I know at all. And the story is about a creature who just lives from life to life, from country to country, from place to place, masquerading as a human in order to live with humans and get to know them, and maybe try to buddy up a little to the warmth of humanity, which it very much does not feel, but wants to feel. It gets to know humans, it comes to know them and lives with them, does all sorts of rituals for them, even though its shape-shifting is unlike any shape-shifting I've ever read in a science fiction story. The human appearance of this creature is literally just a macrame suit that it puts on. It doesn't have a stomach, but it can mimic food. It can mimic eating. It just has to wait until everyone's around and then extrude its stomach and clean it out. And the flesh is pretty strong, but it wears out over time. Literally, it wears down over time at the collar or at the belt. The teeth don't really work too well because this creature doesn't have teeth, so the teeth is just sort of stuck there. Everything about it everything about its human appearance is artificial, and yet it's an amazing job that's done. The creature has no malevolent intent whatsoever, and the crisis that it encounters as the story progresses is genuinely touching. So, monster here would be, or creature is the word here in the tag, and that's probably right. That's probably best, because there's definitely a creature in that story. But I don't know how you'd get your hands on it. Maybe you have a copy of the Very Best of the Best. Maybe you got a copy. I'm sure there's a copy at your bookstore or at your library. If you want a science fiction short story that'll stick with you, I mean, there are quite a few really good ones in that book. There's a take on John Carpenter's The Thing that will send a shiver down your spine. But if you want a short story that will stick with you for a while, I would suggest My English Name by R.S. Benedict from that anthology. And then there are bonus questions. Bonus question number 1 is, what's your favorite Christmas/holiday movie? And my favorite is one that's conspicuously absent from this list. It's The Lion in Winter, the movie version of James Goldman's play, which takes place over Christmas. And Christmas and the carols and the resurrection and whatnot are liberally referenced throughout. Liberally referenced throughout. Love, in a world where carpenters get resurrected, anything is possible. What shall we hang this Christmas? The holly or each other? So I want to mention The Lion in Winter, but there's also another conspicuous absence from this list of Christmas movies, of course, and that's Die Hard. Or perhaps is Kraken to a Good Book part of the... maybe she falls on the side of the raging cinemaphile debate about whether or not Die Hard is a Christmas movie. Maybe she's on the other side and says it's an action movie that just happens to take place at Christmas. If that's true, then she is lamentably wrong, although she's in good company, because President Obama believes the same heretical thing. Die Hard is clearly a Christmas movie. Anyway, and do you have a favorite or just recommend a book to read about Christmas or the holidays? I don't really. I've read a couple of books about how basically Christmas in the kitschy, sentimental way that we understand it was created by Prince Albert, the consort of Queen Victoria. And there have been a couple of good books on that, but fairly dry. So there's none that I would actually recommend. And there you have it. That is the Fave Festive family film firmly flying forth from friendly Finland tag. and all it's left to do is tag people. And I don't know who's done this and who hasn't. I would say if you're in the holiday mood, or even particularly if you're not, do this tag and let us know what you think. So I'm going to wrap this up for now, trying a new filming location here, hoping that it's not only not wobbly, but also not hoping that it works. If it doesn't, I'll keep trying other locations until I find one that does. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.